So we've got two M3s leading out the RS500s. Pretty much all of the famous liveries are represented one way or another. Can you think of a famous one that's not represented, Bruce?
I'm struggling. I was sort of ticking them off as we were walking down there, and I'd forgotten the Cam Shipping one of Lawrence Bristow until I looked and said, "Oh, good grief!" But it's just great to see them. I'd be interested to see how much they press on around the circuit, because these were cars that were super quick. There's that Dennis Leach liveried Rover STI in there as well in the mix. Of course, Dennis was a club racer really who tried to take it to the big boys, and they had the budgets, but if he could have a car that could get him close, he'd go out and give it a lick. So did so well in Mustangs, but then really had a good go in the Rover as well. That's black with the orange nose, but that Texaco livery, number 7 RS500, that would have been shining through the nights, taking the battle to BMW in the Spa 24 Hours. A very strong line up, day-glow orange on the side, going through St Mary's.
And of course, had some fantastic fights with Andy Rouse's own developed car, didn't it? Because Rouse entered the TT in the European Touring Car Championship and then rather cheekily beat the works cars at Silverstone, and actually ended up costing them the championship. And they then entered, they were also entering 2 or 3 of the British Touring Car races that year, so we had some Steve Soper versus Andy Rouse battles, the most famous one being, of course, probably at Brands Hatch, Bruce.
Yeah, many swings and roundabouts in those championships, but that has also always been part of the mix in touring car racing, when you've got several teammates who can help you along the way. But just great to see these cars. I'm almost feeling as I'm back at Silverstone, the similarities are so great. Not raining though, that's good. Many a tourist trophy we were rain lashed, I remember. So the car's coming round to sit on the grid, one would think.
Probably worth mentioning the difference between the RS Cosworth and the RS500, isn't there, Bruce? Because the RS Cosworth, the sort of the earlier turbo version of the Sierra, I think about 350 brake horsepower, if I remember correctly, and the M3s, because they had a better chassis and frankly were a bit more reliable, could occasionally beat them. But once the bigger turbo came in with the RS500, which is an upgraded car, 500 plus brake horsepower, then it really became the dominant car in Group A. Really the only car that ever sorted out an RS500 was of course the Nissan Skyline over in Australia. Everywhere else the Sierra was the thing to have.
Yes, and once the reliability was sorted, it was always a slight Achilles heel. The cars were so quick, but would they be there in the longer races? Certainly for the European Touring Car or World Touring Car Championship, whatever it was at the time. The longer races, reliability was all the more essential, so they didn't always get the prizes you'd expect them to have. But great to see some of these other liveries, like the one that Carl Jones is in, the Louis Magazine car. I always see that and just think Manuel Reuter. It's funny how these names just pop into your head. You're sort of trawling through the Rolodex of your mind, I think.
Some colours and combinations just instantly say one name, don't they?
Yeah, quite so.
It's a bit strange seeing Rob Gravitt in the Chris Hodgetts car.
I know, a bit of cross-pollination.
I remember talking to, did a piece on the 1990 British Touring Car season, which was the last year of the RS500s in this country, and it was actually the only time an RS500 driver won the championship. It was the class system, and even now Rob Gravitt, Andy Rouse and Tim Harvey disagree on why it was that Gravitt was able to win that championship. Tim and Andy maintained it was all about tyres, and Rob says, well, you had to drive it properly.
Quite honestly, if you put those three in a room and asked them to agree on something, that would be an impossibility anyhow. So,
no, it's funny how raw it still was to some of them.
We've moved on. So there, ladies and gentlemen, the Group A, the latter day Group A cars. There, the M3 BMWs and the Ford RS500 Sierras. A couple of Rovers in there for good measure as well at the back end. But Roberto Ravaglia, so successful, always understated out of the car, but absolutely mighty on board. Leads them round the second BMW M3. Here's the Minshaw Mobile. And Jason at the wheel, Father Alan raced that for years. And then the many liveries of the Sierra 500.
Never an easy car to get off the line, the RS500, so they've done well so far.
Franklin to Carl Jones gets his off the line very nicely indeed. One of Paul Linfoot's cars.
Well, Carl likes to drive sideways. He used to drive the Duckham's cars. In fact, he finished third at that Brands Hatch race between Soap and Rouse. And I'm sure he'll be trying to put on a good show. Andrew Kirkley, that car is one of the more original cars. A lot of cars that in this lineup that race in various series have had modern electronics and things put on them to improve reliability and quite understandably, but he's kept his as original as possible. So it's still a little bit like a light switch. We had Andrew Jordan track testing last year, and he found it the power delivery to be pretty interesting. It was nothing 500 horsepower.
Well, we just had sight of the Aussie RS500, the Shell liveried one, the Shell Ultra car, and I remember there was a confusion when it came into the pits at the Tourist Trophy one year. They noticed something, the car had changed handling, but the reason it had was the rear screen had popped out. So its sort of internal airflow was feeling very strange indeed. I can't think who was at the wheel at the time, but it took them a while to work out what had gone on.
It wouldn't be your first thought if the handling started going off, would it?
I think the driver just felt there was a lot of movement in the car, didn't realise why. Imagine that sort of round the old Stowe and Club, that would be quite something.
Now we'll grab and let Revalia go past him. What do you think?
Answers on a postcard. So it's starting to get different engine notes now, much harder engine notes, both Cosworth and from the M3. So the Rover, a nice burble in comparison as it comes around the circuit.
Well, of course, the M3 ended up racing, the E30 M3 ended up with 3 different engines, didn't it? It had a 2.3 to start with, and then when 2 litre regulations came in here, obviously there was a 2 litre version. I think in the DTM, before the BMW pulled out, they ended up at about 2.5, which really was a very tasty piece of kit.
We always wonder what you call the model after the Evo.
Yeah.
Evo Plus. Also nice when you have a car that stayed in the family for such a long time. Looking at Jason Minshaw, father Alan, the man who founded Demon Tweaks. That car's just been theirs forever.
Yes. Yeah, it was good in that livery too.
Yeah, one of the better
ones.
ones.
Jim Richards had one in JPS livery, didn't he, in Australia?
Yeah.
That always looked very good too.
There's quite a history of cars being raced in John Player liveries down there in the 24 hours. I think there was a 635 as well.
I think he won the championship in certainly the M3.
It is funny though, just looking out of your commentary box window, an M3 goes past. It's Emanuele Pirro on board. And also when the world, I can never remember what year the World Touring Car Championship took over from the European. I think it was
87,
Worlds,
wasn't it?
87. Oh dear, that was the one that went off in the first session at the outset, but just to get used to the Texaco livery cars, because obviously the Sierras, because they were the works team over there, didn't see them more than once, sometimes twice a year over in the UK. Used to run normally 2 of them. Klaus Diesvits, one of the drivers, Steve Soper, etc., top teams.
Yeah, it was always a bit special when Eggenberger came over and did a round of the British Touring Car Championship, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was just nice for an occasion to mix together the best of the various national championships around Europe, and really, from the outside, from the spectator bank, you always want to know if your driver is better than the best of the best, if you will, in other countries. Much like I always enjoy the British and Irish Lions in rugby, just to see how the players work when they have to fit together. We'll find out that team announcement fairly shortly.
Well, of course, it also helps your business. Or someone like Andy Rouse, when he could prove that he could tune a Cosworth engine as well or better than Eggenberger, that would he ended up building quite a few cars, for customers. It became a strong business.
Yeah, it certainly gives you a shop window down. 46 being driven with gusto. That is Roberto Revalia, but driven with more gusto. That's one of the other M3s. It is Emanuele Pirro, just locked up last time coming into St Mary's. He is right on it, but Minshaw and Revalia, a great little run seeing those two together as they go through St Mary's and into the dip. behind the Aussie, if you will, RS500, the Shell Ultra car. BMW M3s look so tidy. The Ford much more extravagant in its appearance and its handling as well. It's certainly an absolute handful for the drivers for the RS500.
Oh, completely different approaches, weren't they? One one was all chassis and one was all power.
But I remember, racing people are very much early adopters, standing in race paddocks after the first the Sierra Cosworths came out, just seeing who was getting out of that sort of silvery blue one that had arrived, and they were just amazing cars. Just in terms of performance you could have for not a lot of money for the road, and it really took people to a whole new market.
Tim Harvey tells his story of testing at Silverstone. I'm sure you've heard it, Bruce, of getting the, I think it would have been the Labatt's car, wound up and actually going past an F3000 car down the straight. I rather suspect the F3000 car was able to outbrake him at the end when they got to Stowe, but I like the idea of being someone in an F3000 car having a saloon car go past down the straight.
Oh, 100%, but that's why you imagine when you have, let's say, 10 of them really competitive in the British Touring Car Championship on a wet track going down to the first corner at full chat. No wonder it made such good TV.
Yes, well, of course, it was a key time for British touring cars, wasn't it? And that's when it really got onto grandstand with commentary from Murray Walker. So it was really the RS500s and the M3s as well, at the very start of that. And it was really the RS500 coming to the end of its homologation that made a few key people, such as Andy Rouse, get together and say, well, we need to make the most of this coverage and interest. What should the next set of rules be? And they effectively invented Super Touring.
Yeah. And that was, of course, a championship, or not a championship, a formula that sort of ran its course, and it had its good years and it had its bad years, but it certainly changed the face of touring car racing. But again, the quest was to make it a worldwide race series. But the Coupe won its place in the hearts of lots of fans around the world because the cars were so spectacular. And as you can hear, that's probably through your mic there, I can hear them coming down the start-finish straight. We catch them on the screen, going past your copy's position, down towards Madgwick. Great sound.
Yes, I couldn't actually hear you for some of that because it was they're really getting them wound up now, which is good. I really like the Goodwood demos. The demonstrations sometimes can be a bit flat, can't they? But when they let them go through and at least rev them a bit on the straights, then you get to see and sound the cars doing what they should be doing.
Oh, quite frankly, they're not at full racing pace, but I'd say they're not a great deal off. They go faster with every lap.
Which is probably why they flagged them off now.
Yes, I think they did that.
They're getting too into it.
As soon as they noticed Gerhard Berger was really starting to pick up the pace, they put the flag out, and now exactly the same in the second part of the session. There's the ex-Dennis Leach Rover SDI. Doesn't have sponsorship on it now. Didn't really have sponsorship on it then, but the fact was Dennis used to get out and give it a good lick. And that was the beauty. And I always like to see a good privateer having a good go at the works teams.
Yeah, it was a good story, wasn't it? The series.
He's the second last car in the group. Maybe the Listerine Sierra will go on for one more lap. The ex-Graham Good RS500. Big rear wing.
I think Rob Gravitt is speeded up, having seen Minshaw in his mirrors.
Yeah.
And they both pulled away from Revalia. Texaco car spitting flames as it goes across the line.
Yes, when you see cars race in the night, such as them racing in the Spa 24 Hours, it just adds something if you've got something that can spit out a bit of flame.
Oh, you always want a bit of flame. It's like the 935 Porsches always used to do that, didn't they, on the overall and downshift. Just adds a little bit of extra spectacle.
So the message has got through to the drivers. They're all trickling in. They've all taken the checkered flag now. Great to see the cars out on the track, out on a dry track, out in the sunshine. So that's the end of today's demonstrations, and it's time, very shortly, once these cars withdraw, to go racing for the first time, Kevin.
Yes, I can't believe it. We started the day with the Derek Bell Cup Formula 3 cars, didn't we? And we're now ready for the race, but the conditions are very different now to what we saw in qualifying.